At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
Prior to the recession, the city of Elk Grove briefly held the title as the fastest growing city in the United States. Considered a boomtown, its growth ground to a halt as the nation's economy struggled to recover. Now home to more than 160,000, Elk Grove is the second largest city in the Sacramento region and home to the largest school district in Northern California. What's next for Elk Grove, and what can other cities learn about its growth? Joining us today is Elk Grove's Mayor Gary Davis. Why don't people know, Mayor Davis, how large Elk Grove is?
Well, first of all, it's great to be here with you, Scott. Thanks so much for the opportunity. You know what, the word's getting out. Part of, like you mentioned, Elk Grove grew so fast in such a short period of time that we went from a little town of 65,000 people when we incorporated 14 years ago to 160,000 people today. So you ask the folks that live there, they know very well what's going on in Elk Grove. But we're having to work in a very concerted way to just make sure Elk Grove's on the map.
The recession, that boom happened, and the recession ground you guys to a complete halt. How did you restart the engine down in Elk Grove?
Well, it's interesting. So I ran for the city council in 2006. I had run against one of the incumbents, and another one of the incumbents was replaced at the same time. I would say the first 6 years of cityhood was rocky, right? There were a lot of challenges. Part of it was because they're a new city, and it was right in the midst of the housing boom. But I'll also tell you, they didn't see a rezone for housing they didn't like, and so there were a lot of challenges with growth, and there needed to be some change and some refocus and some strategic planning. And so I kind of ran on a platform of, hey, let's slow down a little bit and put in place some smarter growth strategies. And of course, the economy came along and did what it did, and so I can't take credit for having slowed it down, but it needed to slow down so that we can plan the future.
Elk Grove has this really weird dual reputation. One is that you're right, there was never a greenfield housing proposal that supposedly the city didn't like at one point in time, and on the other hand, up until recently, it really had the reputation as being a very, very unfriendly business environment.
Yeah, in 2005 and 2006, the Sacramento Business Journal said Elk Grove was the worst possible place in the region to do business. Now transformed to 2011 and 2012.
I got to tell you, that was a hotly contested title, so you guys really had to run for that.
Yeah. Well, thankfully we don't have it anymore. 2011 and 2012, we got awards back-to-back from the Region Builders, which is a commercial building organization, for being the most business-friendly city in the Sacramento region. So in a short period of time, we went from the worst to the best, and we're working hard to maintain that. Well, let's say, I harken back to my very first council meeting. I got sworn in December 2006, and I called for an audit. I said we needed to bring someone from the outside in and look at our process from the inside out and show us what we can do to be more business friendly. Let's bring stakeholders together. Bottom line is we did that, implemented most of those changes, and we lowered our fees, which is a big part of it. We created a more transparent process, which is a big part of it, so that if you pick up the phone and call the city of Elk Grove and say, I'm thinking about locating my business, instead of getting the runaround, you get a straight answer and you get somebody that will meet with you and hold your hand through the process.
Now, a lot of the smart people say that Elk Grove can never be more than a bedroom community, and that the decisions that were made many years ago about approving housing on top of housing on top of housing with no employment areas have made it so that, unlike a Roseville, that the die is cast and the most that you all can do is tinker around the edges.
Then it's not that smart, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, the county of Sacramento in the early years of cityhood certainly put in place a lot of homes, a lot of people, and they took land that could have been, office, and they rezoned it. But if you look around the city, there's quite a few infill sites available. What I'm excited about, though, is if you look at the city's last major planning area, SEPA, the Southeast Policy Planning Area.
Give us a sense of where that is.
Yeah, it's 1,200 acres right along the Camera Road corridor, just west of the proposed mall site. We spent a lot of time, in fact, those 1,200 acres, we said, we're not going to let the development community come along and dictate what goes into that project. This is going to be a city-led and initiated project. And what we have now is...
As a developer, I can tell you that's rare.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they're our stakeholder. They're just not driving the ship, right? So they're in the ship. They're just not in the, they're not the captain. So what we have now is a 1,200-acre project that has enough land zoned for office to almost double the number of jobs in our entire city.
Now, is this the land that was contested over? Because there was something that came up in the last year where you guys got a lot of criticism trying to leapfrog, the urban boundaries, and you're going to cannibalize farmland and that sort of thing. Is this that area?
It's not. No, this is in our existing city boundary, but to address that, 2007, the county sewer department came, county sanitation district came and said, hey, we're putting together our master plan for sanitation. The county said, hey, we're putting our master plan for water. If you're ever going to grow, you need to let us know. So even though 2007 wasn't really the best time to pursue a sphere of influence, we needed to in order to let the county and other agencies know what kind of infrastructure needs to be put in place over the next 20, 30, 40 years. So we did pursue an expanded sphere of influence. We were able to scale it back twice. Ultimately it failed, and I think at some point in the future it'll be back.
How do you deal with the arguments, though, that Elk Grove has plenty of land, it doesn't need to expand its sphere of influence at all, and that you could grow comfortably for the next decade, maybe two, with what you've already got?
That we're planning longer term than a decade or two, right? And I think this is the problem that a lot of local governments face, that most of the time they only look from one election to the other, frankly, much less a decade. And so, as we look 30, 40, and 50 years out, we realize that we cannot cement this jobs to housing imbalance the way it is. We have 160,000 people, we have 30,000 jobs. If we just accepted that that's the case and left it alone, then we can't build a healthy, sustainable future for our community. In order to attract high-quality restaurants, retail, you have to have a day crowd. People can't all leave during the day to go to work. So we have to make sure that we have employment land available.
All right, so now I'm going to put on my developer hat for a second. All right, you put the sphere of influence in place, right? What's going to assure the residents of Elk Grove and the region that this time is going to be different, and that the plan that you're putting in place actually is going to match your aspirations? And frankly, guys like me aren't just going to come in, change it around, and we'll just have more rooftops and no more jobs to show for ourselves.
Well, for us, the proof is in the pudding, in that this 1,200-acre SEPA area matches exactly the kind of future growth that needs to happen. It's mixed use. There's this really nice town center corridor. We call it employment-oriented. In fact, we're trying to coin a new planning term, employment-oriented development, with potentially 25,000 jobs available in this one 1,200-acre parcel, doubling the number of jobs in the community in roughly 5% geographically of the city. That's pretty substantial, we feel. So, anything beyond that, any future growth, we know has to match that. But we also know that it's not acceptable to simply say business as usual. We also put in place some safeguards. That can't be rezoned without a 4/5 vote of the council. So we want to make sure that going forward, we have a vision today, but if it does take 20, 30, 40 years to build out, we want to make it really difficult for it to be rezoned in the future.
And you understand the argument that some have is that we're touting ourselves as the farm-to-fork capital of the world, but our most precious resource in that farm-to-fork equation is having the farm in the first place. And that the argument goes that if we keep cannibalizing that farmland, we're wasting our biggest strategic resource. Do you buy that?
Yeah, well, I think that if you look at Elk Grove, we're actually very uniquely situated in the farm-to-fork movement. Roughly 1/3 of our almost 40 square miles of a city is zoned ag residential. So we have a third of our city that has 2-acre lots. There's no sewage coming out, there's no water going in, and it's prime. We have people with small family, I call them hobby farms, throughout our city. That's kind of on the northern, western boundary of it. So I think, of course, big agriculture, big farms is always going to be a big part of the farm to fork movement, but small farms, hobby farms, backyard farms, I think play a critical role in that.
And you all have big aspirations. So one of the aspirations that's being talked about right now is MLS is looking at Sacramento, and there's a group that is situated within the general downtown area that wants to place an arena and attract an MLS team to the city of Sacramento. Elk Grove has a competing vision.
Yeah.
Tell us about that vision.
Yeah, sure. First of all, MLS is looking at the Sacramento region because of our efforts. We started about 2.5 years ago, just knocking on doors, cold calling. We know that that this market could sustain a professional soccer team. We know that this market can support more professional sports in general. And so we did a feasibility study that basically proved what we knew. And in fact, Elk Grove specifically has the largest youth soccer market in the country.
Really?
Almost 7,000 kids playing soccer. And
Elk Grove proper?
Elk Grove's proper, absolutely, yeah. And so, you know, we found an ownership group about 2.5 years ago. They had looked at Sacramento, and at the time Sacramento wasn't interested. We got their attention, we signed an exclusive negotiating agreement, and we went to town. And so it's taken a long time, a lot of negotiation. And when the Republic came along and found such success, it actually only confirmed what we knew in our feasibility study, but it also really helped put us on the map in a more aggressive way. And I think in some ways moved us up the food chain and as being a more desirable market to the league, right? A tested market is always better than an untested market.
You realize the concern is that these two competing groups are essentially going to cancel each other out, and Sacramento is going to blow its chance. Why Elk Grove as opposed to Sacramento?
Well, I hold hope that ultimately we end up working together. I think there's an opportunity for us to work in partnership, the two ownership teams. I mean, they have to make that decision, though, right? The two ownership groups do. They're both well connected to MLS, which is great. You know, puts us in a position to be successful. But from my perspective, Elk Grove is a more desirable location because the location where we have purchased land for a potential stadium provides an opportunity for the whole Central Valley to access professional soccer.
What do you mean by that?
You know, Fresno, Modesto, Stockton. I mean, you know, tens of thousands of crazy screaming soccer fans that won't make it to downtown Sacramento could pull off a Grant Line Road and into an MLS stadium, and then we'll also pull from the Sacramento market. So, from my perspective, Elk Grove is actually a more desirable location, and I think that is why we have the attention of MLS. That, and we have land in the bank, and we have a financing plan for a stadium almost complete.
You mentioned Grant Line Road, and that's off of 99, and potentially putting a stadium there. Don't you have to deal with another issue first, though? There's a project out there that many people affectionately refer to as Stonehenge, which was supposed to be the Elk Grove Mall.
Yeah, yeah.
What's happening with that?
Well, first of all, my whole desire to go after professional soccer came from a creative brainstorm about how we can get that mall back on track, right? I mean, if the mall would have been probably 10 months or a year ahead of schedule, which if you remember it was held back by a series of lawsuits. If it was ahead of schedule, it would be open today, it would probably be thriving today. But it didn't, right? I mean, the owner of that mall went into bankruptcy when a lot of other companies struggled during the economic downturn. And so I thought, well, what can we bring into the area around the mall in this down economy that would drive thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to the area so that we can get that mall back on track. So, so there's been a very concerted effort to try and rejuvenate that area. The good news is it is back on track. You know, the Howard Hughes company, who owns the mall now, they've brought a proposal to the city to do a high-end outlet center, but it's a pretty special high-end outlet center. It's very different than, was way different than the Folsom Outlet Center in Vacaville, and it's even different than the successful Livermore Center. Livermore is this rectangular box of really nice shopping with a food court in the middle. The proposed Elk Grove Outlet Collection is a much nicer architecturally, but instead of a food court, there'll be restaurants, there's going to be a movie theater, there'll be an outdoor amphitheater with a fireplace and a place to you know, it's going to be a destination.
You know, all of these things that Elk Grove is attempting to do, it causes a little bit of a conversation within the region, because people think of Elk Grove as either this really small cow town, or as, essentially an area that's got challenges. It's the southern part of the county. How do you respond? What is the information or the biggest misperception that people have about Elk Grove?
I think that well, first of all, how I respond is saying, come take a tour, see what our city has to offer, and I show them and explain the vision. But I also will say that what I've realized, I've been in office for 8 years now, going into my second term as mayor, and what I've realized is that the places in the country that get the big projects are the places in the country where leadership goes after the big projects. It's not rocket science. If you're willing to knock on the doors and you're willing to work hard and lay out a vision to put it together, then those are the cities that are going to compete for the big ideas. And so, for sure, Elk Grove has come a long way in a short period of time, and I think that we have some challenges as far as...
What's the biggest challenge you think you guys are facing right now?
There's the challenge of perception, right? Certainly, and I'll say, I feel like my job as mayor is to constantly have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder to say, don't count Elk Grove out. And we're the second largest city in the region. We recently got two kind of, I don't know, awards, but we got pointed out for two things by different online newspapers. One is that we were just pointed out as the second most livable city in the state of California.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And then the second one is that we were noted as the 10th best city in the United States to raise a family. Those two things didn't happen by accident. They happened because we focused on building strong neighborhoods, focused on building up our quality of life. And the growth that came in the last decade or so also brought this tremendous diversity, which I think makes us unique in that we're this suburban / partially rural middle working class community that's incredibly diverse, and it's integrated diversity, right? Every school, every park, every place you turn, you see a melting pot, and I think there's something in that has helped us build this incredibly high quality of life.
What brought you to Elk Grove?
For those two reasons, the fact that, obviously we work towards that, but Elk Grove is a family-oriented community. I have 3 children, my wife and I do. We now have a teenager, we have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, but we moved to Elk Grove in 2004 because of its potential, because of its family-oriented nature. To me, I love the city. It's a place that is just destined for greatness. And, I get to go chase big things while at the same time knowing that we're not ignoring our neighborhoods and we're not ignoring the quality of life. And, I think that it's important, if a city is going to take on big projects, you need to first make sure you have strong neighborhoods.
So if you think about that, strong neighborhoods and these building blocks of having a great community, what handful of things do you think you have right now, and what is it that you need to get?
Well, we have parks, we have trails, we have almost 100 parks. We've got a good high quality public school system. We have a community college campus now that has a satellite in our city. What we need is civic amenities that make Elk Grove more of a destination, and also and we need opportunities for our residents to not have to leave to go to work. So we really are truly laser focused on growing our job space. And that's, having land available is the first step. Having the wherewithal to not rezone it is really important, of course. But it also takes cold calling, frankly, knocking on doors. And when we knock on doors, we have to have a package. I always say, if you roll out a red carpet and someone walks down the red carpet but the door's locked, you've wasted your time and their time. And so we have to roll out the red carpet. We have to make sure that door's wide open. And I think we have to do a little more to attract employers to Elk Grove.
Well, you talk about civic amenities. One of the things that has been an initiative, I don't know where it stands, but you all were thinking about putting together a fairly ambitious performing arts center. The architecture on it was, pretty astounding. And I'm curious, that sort of amenity, what's the value for that? Especially when you've got, 3 stages out in Folsom, you've got the community center in downtown Sacramento, you've got Mondavi. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately what we will have in our Civic Center will not be large-scale performing arts. It will be community theater, community performing arts. But we're looking to build a Civic Center that has a children's museum, a library, a children's museum and a library that work together on programming, some community theater, and other sort of arts that that can be for the places for them to be displayed, and you can bring in roaming art collections. But you will also see our Civic Center, right, our city government center. In addition, we are now looking, actually, it's interesting because as this conversation got started, we were right in the midst of the housing boom, and this Civic Center is going to be funded by permit fees. And so as things slowed down, we've had to kind of temper our planning. But what we decided to do is initiate phase 1 of this, which is an aquatic complex. And we will have in place an aquatic complex that's of caliber to host the Olympic trials and swimming sports.
Really?
It will have the only the second Olympic caliber diving platform in Northern California. Stanford University has one. Ours will be number 2. So we'll be able to go after all sorts of aquatic competitions. But we decided that we have money in the bank, and of that money that's in the bank, it has to be spent on the Civic Center, $14 million. We're going to put that on the table for this aquatic complex, and then asked the private sector to leverage it.
How did you get that money in the bank? You all have a different structure because a lot of cities in California flirted with bankruptcy. Some, like Stockton, actually had to go into bankruptcy. But you guys were always financially solid pretty much through the recession. What's different about the way you guys are organized?
Well, this crazy business financing idea of budgeting idea of not spending more than you take in, right? I mean, I think that's been our mantra, right? But I will say for the Civic Center, it's a dedicated revenue stream that comes from a permit fee, and that permit fee is placed on all development in our city. So a couple $100s for every house, commercial project in our city is dedicated towards the Civic Center project. So we couldn't spend it elsewhere if we wanted to. So that's the money that's in the bank, and we've said to the private sector, show us what you've got. And so we did an RFP, and what came out of it was a private sector water park operator that said, we'll take your $14 million, and then we'll bring 40 to 60 million on top of that and build not just an aquatic complex, but a recreational aquatic center that has lazy pools, zip lines, other sorts of family entertainment.
Okay. I want to go back to, you talk about working together and working with other entities. One of the things that attracts people to Elk Grove happens to be the educational system. And Elk Grove Unified is the largest district in Northern California. How is it that the city and the school district work together with each other in order to ensure that you keep attracting, or at least you retain those families that are here, that they're getting a quality education?
Yeah, well, I'll say that we work together on planning neighborhoods, making sure that schools are the center of neighborhoods, that there's connectivity, so kids can bike and walk to school. But I will also say that I think that's one of our areas for improvement, is figuring out how to work closer with the school district. I think we have leadership conversations, but I think there's a lot of ways we can work better together. For example, Elk Grove Unified has their own police department. Elk Grove City has their own police department, of course. And if we've attempted to communicate, I think we communicate as well as we can, but incidents happen on school campuses that carry over into neighborhoods. Incidents happen in neighborhoods that carry over onto school campuses. Even though Elk Grove just got pointed out as having the lowest crime in the Sacramento region, lower than Roseville.
Really?
Yeah. We can do better, and I think by having better coordination between the school district and the city, that's a great opportunity.
Let's go back to one more big planning issue. There's a thing called the South Connector, which is to try and connect I-5 and 99. And this is supposed to alleviate some of the congestion within the region. Others are saying that this is going to be one more thing that's going to cause leapfrog development. What's the position of Elk Grove on that connector, and what's happening with it right now?
Well, the connector is critical for a lot of reasons, but I will challenge the leapfrog notion like this. I think that the problem in our region is that the County of Sacramento and kind of folks that are anti-growth have always said, let's draw a hard line and we'll do, you know, high density right up to that line and we're never going to go beyond it. You know, in Elk Grove Boulevard used to be that line. Well, when I moved here, I lived on the south side of Elk Grove Boulevard, right? I mean, so clearly those lines are crossed. And I think when you approach land use planning in the short term and you just say, hey, we're going to draw a line and just say it's never everything going to, you know, no pressures will come to bear to extend it, then you end up with leapfrog development. What we are attempting to do is look 30, 40, 50 years out and say, let's look long-term about planning, and that connector is going to be an integral part of goods movement, of moving commuters around the region, and more.
And we're going to leave it there. Thank you, Mayor Davis. And that's our show. Thanks to our guest, and thanks to you for watching Studio Sacramento. I'm Scott Syphax. See you next time right here on KVIE.
At Five Star Bank, community is at the heart of what we do. Every day we strive to have thoughtful solutions for our customers and help our communities prosper. Honest dialogue about the issues affecting the region is vitally important to that prosperity. We are proud to be part of the conversation and hope you'll join in.
All episodes of Studio Sacramento, along with other KVIE programs, are available to watch online at kvie.org/video.